Greetings, Minecrafters, and welcome to an exciting discussion, another Minecraft discussion today. I just hope I can stay focused. This is Kimberly Quinn, and the reason I might not stay focused is our first grandchild, our baby girl Isabel, was born today, January 14th. This may be airing a little later, but I just kind of want to scream it to the world. My happy bubble is full. Woohoo! Now, so to make a quick shift in, because of course we're all about positivity here. What I like to talk about today, in addition to our brand new grandchild, is practicing regularly practicing a positive stress mindset or stress management. It's interesting because you hear lots about stress management, but we got to really. I'm hoping to just shift out of just that kind of locked into that management word because really it involves practice. Whatever we practice, we inevitably get better at, right? And I don't know, it involves a shift into a new perspective because stress isn't always bad for one. We can change our outlook on anything for two. And also, we can set ourselves up. I don't want to say prevention because that just sounds like a brick wall to me, but set ourselves up to maybe reduce some of the unnecessary stress in our lives. So we are practicing regularly positive stress, say management and perspective. Let's say that. And so my inspiration from for today comes from Richard Carlson, PhD, and he writes these "Don't Sweat the Small Stuff" books. Right, they're little square. Actually, maybe they're not exactly square, but anyway, they're little books, and he's got a bunch of them. I own, I think, at least three or four of them. And one is about this one is coming from "Don't Sweat the Small Stuff in Love." So this particular inspiration is about sort of reducing relationship stress and also putting a positive spin on the stress that enters relationships when possible. It's obviously not always possible. If you look at the spectrum of the stress that can happen in relationships, of course, there's going to be a wide, gamut of things that we control things we can't control and such. We just want to take a look at that because remember, we're all about with Minecraft, all about progress, not perfection. We're all about setting the bar, do our best, creating a happiness lifestyle. And this is about, we are always moving forward, kind of being living our best life and a better life today than we did yesterday to the best of our ability, right? So Richard kind of starts out, he says there's a great deal that can be done aside from dealing with your relationship to help you become more relaxed and less reactive to sweat the small stuff less often. And I mean, right there, I want to hone in on the more relaxed and less reactive piece because just stating again, I was doing an episode a few days ago, I think, on the Fast Mind Club, but we're talking about relaxation, and not everybody relaxes the same, just like anything else. Not everybody likes the same movies. Not everybody likes to exercise the same. Not everybody, likes the same, food. I mean, so obviously, but people really get locked into this. Relaxation means sitting on a couch and watching a movie, oftentimes sitting in the backyard with a lemonade. And certainly those things can be relaxing, but not everyone relaxes that way. So it's really important for you when you think about relaxing, how you are really and truly relaxed, not as how you are relaxed according to what other people say and what other people want you to do. So for me, I am by far the most relaxed when I am moving and moving in it, to be even more specific, moving in nature. I don't know. We live in a very, very, very rural area. I would guess that if I were trying to bike through Manhattan, I would not be very relaxed. Skiing through the trees at Jay Peak, very relaxed. Running down the roads with our beautiful view in the country, very relaxed. Walking, even and playing with the goats in the backyard, very relaxed. Tai Chi with our person in town who does that in the library, very relaxed. So you really, really need to take a look at what personally works for you. And then the less reactive part is also important because it's relationship to mindfulness. So if we're talking about trying to reduce or minimize the stress, like kind of skimming as much, trimming the fat, right? Skimming as much stress, unnecessary stress, just doesn't need to be there, okay, as we can. And there really isn't a way to not bring up mindfulness, which is about being present in this moment right now. When we are present in this moment right now, we automatically become less reactive. It's in the contract for mindfulness. We just less knee jerky, right? Because if we can shift out of being reactive and shift more into being responsive, which is a more slowed down, I thought it through, checked the facts, now I'll make a decision, now I'll decide what to say, way better than a knee jerk, oh yeah, well let me tell you what I think, and oh yeah, did you see this article? I'm right because this is newer and whatever. Reactive is really not where we want to be. Responsive is where we want to be. And so, in order to minimize stress and sort of increase our level of happiness, we really want to focus on doing the best we can to be more mindful as much as possible all day, regardless of what you're doing. If you're sitting on the potty, you can be more mindful. In the shower, be more mindful. Brushing your teeth, having a conversation, eating dinner, all of it can be done more mindfully. And this will make us less reactive. And that is a huge stress buster. And then Richard goes on, he says, many of the most effective things you can do to become happier and more peaceful fall into a category that we like to call stress prevention. So that's where I think it's Richard and I are kind of on the same page. He's just using it's rhetorical. He's using stress prevention. And I think preventing stress can be challenging and also become stressful. So stressful stress prevention, I'm not sure we just word it that way. I think we mean the same thing, which is to reduce as much as possible things that just aren't necessary. I guess in that sense, it's really kind of the same, because we often, when we are not being mindful and we're on autopilot, which is the biggest thief of life minutes that there could possibly be, when we're sort of on, in broccoli mode, zoning out, this is when a lot of these sort of unnecessary stressors sneak their way in because we're not actively engaged in our lives. So, again, when we're more mindful and actively engaged in our lives, like, hey, whoa, that isn't something I need to take on today, or so and so negative person comes up and they're whining and complaining, whining and complaining, and in passive autopilot broccoli mode, we just nod and smile and absorb that stuff. When we're active in our lives, we find a very polite way, a quiet, quietly effective way to get out of dodge from that negative Nelly. So there is the difference. So I'm really thinking of what Richard's calling a stress prevention. I'm thinking of running your stress through a filter, like, so let's just say that stress filtering. I like it better. So what Richards calls stress prevention, again, I think we mean the same thing, just different words. Stress filtering and reduction involves any activity or attitude that is designed or tends to produce on its own a calmer and more accepting attitude toward life. So mindfulness would definitely fall into that category, right? Being present in this moment right now as if our lives depended on it, which is a paraphrase. That's what John Kabat-Zinn says. In fact, it's John Kabat-Zinn who says, the very definition of stress, the very definition of stress is wanting the present moment to be something other than it is. Think of that, and when we allow ourselves to be pulled out of the place of least resistance, which is what we are experiencing in the present moment. It's this place of not resisting. It's this not or non-resisting. This place of allowing, right? So we start to get all this resistance geared up. We dig in with our claws. That's when we get all stressed out, wanting the present moment to be something other than it is, right? So then Richard says, what's exciting and encouraging is that people who become more relaxed and peaceful, however they do it, are almost always able to bring that sense of peace into their relationships. So this is kind of what I was thinking with Richard today, is the whole relationship thing, because today's episode applies to your relationship just with yourself, which is the most important love affair you'll ever have in your whole life, right? Because we can't give what we don't have. We can't love anybody else if we don't love us. So that's what we're not talking about narcissism. We're not talking about being selfish. We're talking about being authentic, because the number one relationship we have in our lives is with us. We come in alone, we go out alone. Think about it. So we are our own best friend, and when we become our own best friend, loving ourselves unconditionally, and accepting ourselves unconditionally and showing ourselves compassion, well, then we're able to offer that to everybody else. So, of course, and mindfulness is deeply embedded here, because one of the other components to mindfulness is, which we talked about in various episodes, is the non-judgment piece, right? So when we're practicing being in the moment without judgment, when an anxious thought goes by or an angry thought or whatever thought goes by, okay, apparently I'm nervous today, whatever, not judging it. Well, obviously, very naturally, very organically, this leaks its way into our relationships. And so Richard is pretty much saying the same thing, that that we when we sort of learn to become more relaxed and more peaceful, we take all of this with us into our relationships. And our relationships, as he says, they become more patient, kind, compassionate, and generous. Of course they do. In addition, they usually become better listeners, um, and are able to make the ups and downs of relationships more in stride. Also true when because mindfulness, again, when we can listen mindfully, that can only go places good. Think about how great it feels to be listened to. I mean, really listened to. Like, that person climbed right into your rib cage without judgment. They felt your pain or your excitement or whatever it is you're sharing, and it stayed right there. You know with full confidence it's not going anywhere else. That feeling just has us feel validated and loved, not alone, not crazy, maybe, depending what it is, because the person understands. And it's just so good for relationships. And also, it embraces that vulnerability. When we can truly be vulnerable like that, of course, there's just so much strength in it. And then Richard continues to say their behavior in general becomes more conducive to a loving relationship when the person is sort of practicing positive stress filtering, right? Or however you want to fill in your own word. If you like the management word, go ahead and use it. Positive stress filtering and perspective, they criticize less often, become less defensive and judgmental, dish out more compliments, become jealous less often, and are a lot easier to be around. I love that, because here's the thing, and this is taking me straight to my dear friend Oprah. I love her so much. When she talks a lot about keeping ourselves filled up, which also rolls into our chat on stress filtering today, just like the mindfulness thing does. Because when we keep ourselves filled up, letting go of, or just say to yourself, hashtag self care is not selfish, right? When we let go of that whole guilt thing that goes along with, self care, practicing self care, and we actually embrace it and keep our cup full, right? Well, when we are, like Oprah says, whatever's in the cup is for us, whatever overflows is for everybody else. When we practice that diligently, then we have a lot more to give, for one, and we're very pleasant to be around. When we allow the cup to be empty, we've got nothing left to give. We're burnt out, miserable, and who wants to be around anybody like that? It takes me right to the book The Giving Tree, which anyone who knows me knows that I loathe that book. Not only is it my least favorite children's book, I can't even think of another children's book I don't like. Just that one, because in my opinion, The Giving Tree should be called Codependency for Kids. I mean, because I'm thinking of the tree, the mother tree, if you know the story, and the little boy, and then he grows up, he just keeps taking branches and then fruit and then this and then that. That makes a canoe out of part of her. So she's cut down, cut down, cut down, missing her leaves, missing her fruit, and then missing most of herself, because her trunk is cut down to nothing. And then he ends up still using her by having a seat on her because she's the place to sit. It's absolutely horrible in my opinion. Anyway, we don't want you don't want to be a tree at the stump level. This is not the message we want to send to our kids either, that this is what you need to do, is be completely, physically, emotionally, spiritually depleted, and only then can you be happy. I mean, think about that. So Richard goes on to talk about, he says he did an informal research study project that was designed to determine the effectiveness of various stress reducing techniques. What I discovered was impressive but not surprising. It turned out that people who took a regular yoga or meditation class once a week were 3 times less likely to describe their relationships as stressful. Well, that's no big surprise for every reason we just talked about, right? When we take charge of our lives, right, we realize we're the captains of our own ships. All the other ships in the lagoon benefit too. That's just how it works. And what's interesting, I'm just going to paraphrase here because Richard talks about, and he's absolutely spot on accurate, that when he brings it up to people, they'll often say, I don't have time for a yoga class. I don't have time for a meditation class. And this brings me to what John Kabat-Zinn says too. If mindfulness is something just to add to your to-do list, don't bother. You're just not ready because mindfulness is about being, not doing. It's also free, by the way, right? It's free to be actively engaged in your life is free. Well, look at it that way. There really isn't, forgive me for saying so, there really isn't an excuse. We can mindfully drive, which also works out for other people for the obvious reason. So, really, this is what we're talking about and accepting the present moment as it is. And like John Kabat-Zinn says, I read him and also listen to so much of what he says, and I have for years, which is why it's so easy to rattle off. But basically, thoughts happen like the ocean waves. They just keep coming and coming and coming. And life kind of is like a lasagna noodle too, up, down, up, down, up. So it's kind of like, I forget exactly how he says it. Basically, if you can't stop the waves, learn to surf. And we will become less stressed out. And there's so many people say this. My good friend Oprah, Abraham Hicks is another one, Aaron Doughty in different ways. And the thing is, it's about acceptance and taking life as it comes, because so often we get locked into this illusion of control, which is all it is an illusion. And it's such a happier, less stressful existence on this planet to just take life as it comes. I'm not saying, because with my Minecrafters in class, I'll say, is it that simple? Yes. Is that easy? Not necessarily. Especially if you've gotten very comfortable being stressed, and you might chuckle at that. But some people if you've ever met them, they almost wouldn't know what to do if they had a few hours, never mind a whole day or week, without hardly any stress. They have to create it. I know people who do that. Not just stress, but actual drama. If things are going well, they just have to come up with something. If they don't have any drama of their own. They kind of mooch onto somebody else's drama, so they can just talk about all of it and all the negativity. And it's, you got to really take a look at that dynamic, because that is nothing but a habit. And habits can be shifted out of. It might be a little bit of an uphill push for a while, but you can absolutely do it. And also, when you get on the track, this, mind craft, happiness lifestyle, living your best life, positivity. Obviously, there's still curveballs in life. Nobody's saying that. However, I'll tell you this, it's kind of like you kind of grow a force field around you that nobody else can see. And you become highly sensitive to negativity. And it's like, oh, you just back up immediately. And I'm not saying be insensitive to people's genuine needs. I'm not saying that. I'm talking about the whiners and the complainers, and oh my God, it's raining again. It's always on my day off. Like the clouds had a conspiracy to drop rain on these people, And you just really have to back up from it. You got to just back up from it, because we almost just have a resistance to it. We can't stand it, kind of thing. And so where we want to land is in a place of present moment orientation, right? Living our high vibe, living on our high flying frisbee as our high vibe selves, in a place of love and acceptance. And again, accepting the moment as it is, because stress comes from not doing that. And really to filter out all the unnecessaries. Take just like a to-do list, do a not to-do list. Check off a few things that on this day you just don't need to do. And that's it. So work at that stress filter. This is Kimberly Quinn signing off from the snowy, just gorgeous northern Vermont. Have a mindful day.